It was the middle of breakfast service on Singapore Airlines flight SQ321, flying from London to Singapore. 10 hours in, the plane was flying over the Irrawaddy Basin in Myanmar. It was a rather calm morning. Some of the passengers were waking up to food, others were still dozing. That's when the unthinkable happened. The plane started shaking. Oxygen masks came down. The passengers scrambled for their seatbelts, but before they could strap in, many were hoisted to the ceiling. For a minute, they felt as if they were floating, but then came the freefall. Some hit the overhead compartments, others hit the ground. With all the luggage strewn over the floor. It continued for a few minutes. Many felt they would die right there. They had lost all hope until they heard the pilot. Even he sounded shaken.
We are diverging to Bangkok.
He did not have much to say about it, but believed that it was unexpected turbulence. Once the plane landed in Bangkok, it was time to assess the damage. The Boeing 777-300ER was carrying 211 passengers and 18 crew members. One died of cardiac arrest. "20 were in intensive care units. 71 were heavily injured."
I got a chipped tooth and I had some hurt to my neck, but everything was fine until I arrived back in the airport, and then I started feeling really sick, vomiting. Couldn't stop vomiting, couldn't walk, and yeah, it was pretty bad. Yeah, but there were lots of people in worse positions than me. People were laying out on the floor and they couldn't move. They were completely paralysed.
Every single cabin crew I saw was injured. I didn't see anybody that worked for Singapore Airlines that was not injured. There was one of the cabin crew in front of me who had was in an awful lot of pain with his back, but he continued serving people and helping people and getting medical help as much as he was able to.
We've all heard of bumpy plane rides, some jolts here and there, but a death due to turbulence, that's very, very rare. So what exactly happened there? What is turbulence? Is it becoming more frequent? And can air travel lead to injuries? Turbulence is not new. It takes place when a plane flies through disturbed air, and pilots expect it. It happens when planes fly over oceans, mountains, the equator, or places that have two conflicting jet streams. Usually, it's fairly mild. You would feel some jolting, a sinking feeling in your stomach, but nothing more. Then there's moderate turbulence, like flying through a thunderstorm cloud. This cloud often has chaotic movements of air. It can cause turbulence, sometimes even quite severe jolting. Now, all of this is expected. It's a regular part of flying. But then comes clear air turbulence. Imagine this. You're cruising at over 40,000 feet. The conditions are cloudless, and suddenly you're hit by a jet stream of air, almost like a fast-flowing river, but made of air. It causes the flight to rise, it can fall, or even move sideways. But the problem with this is, no one can predict clear air turbulence. A plane may have flown through a region with flawless conditions, but then the next plane could face severe turbulence, even falling 178 feet in under 1 second, like the Singapore Airlines flight. And it's not a one-off phenomenon anymore, it's becoming more and more common. A few days ago, a Qatar Airways flight from Doha to Dublin experienced this. 12 people were injured. It was flying over Turkey.
A number of the staff had severe injuries. With one had a splint on a hand. They all had some sort of injury to their hands. One had looked like she might have had a twisted ankle. So it was quite scary, but and it was a little bit worrying. Each time we felt turbulence again, I was hanging on a bit tight to my husband, but it was a really, really scary.
It was very scary, to be honest. Like I'm still shivering, right? It was for the 10 or 15 seconds, and that was the worst 15 seconds of my life. But by the God, we are safe. The food was everywhere on the plane.
A Turkish Airlines flight too had the same experience. It was flying from Istanbul to Izmir. That's when it dropped mid-air. The turbulence was so severe, a flight attendant broke her back. Of course, these two flights were flying in the same area, so you could say that maybe this is a turbulent flight route. But consider the Singapore Airlines flight and these ones. They were thousands of kilometers apart. So what explains this turbocharged turbulence? It's climate change. Since 1979, severe turbulence has only risen. It's gone up by 55%, and scientists point towards the changing climate.
Turbulence is becoming more prevalent as climate changes, and a university's research in the United Kingdom has shown that over the last 40 years, severe turbulence has increased by 55%, moderate turbulence by 37%, and slight turbulence or light turbulence by about 17%. So as the weather changes, certainly it is getting more turbulent.
So plane rides are going to get bumpy. But are there any particular routes that will be affected? Well, this will be a global phenomenon. But a few flight routes will be more affected, like the North Atlantic, Western Pacific, Southeast China, and Northern India. If you're flying over any of these routes, expect some turbulence. Which brings us to an important question. Will air travel become dangerous? You see, airplanes are really sturdy. They have what it takes to take even the worst turbulence, so don't imagine any scenario of them breaking apart mid-air.
The aircraft is built to be able to withstand any of the turbulence. So the physical aircraft is built for that. But inside the aircraft, you and I as passengers, luggage, catering equipment, that is all mobile. And that's where a lot of the damage takes place because all of that is thrown around.
But while turbulence is not good for passengers, it is terrible for airplanes. It leads to structural damage. Turbulence costs the airline industry up to $500 million annually. This includes the damage to planes, delays, and even payments for liabilities. So, as turbulence increases, these costs rise too. So what can the world do about it? You cannot prevent turbulence, but there is a silver lining.
At the same time, over the last 20 years in particular, aircraft are fitted with far more sophisticated radar called multiscan, which, as I mentioned, gives a really good picture of what the weather is like ahead. They're also making progress into turbulence detection as well. And also airlines are now sharing data between aircraft of encounters with turbulence, so everybody can be advised that's on that same flight track.
So what can you do as a passenger? Well, not much really. You'll have to sit through it. But if there's one thing you must do, is always keep your seatbelt on, no matter what the sign above you says.